Welcome back to another episode of Harmonious at Lunch, the show that fuels your business success. I'm Brandon Gano, your host and guide through the world of harmonious business growth. Today, we're unlocking powerful strategies with industry experts to help your business thrive. If you're a business owner, entrepreneur, or executive, you are in the right place. Join me and our incredible guests today on the journey to clarity, growth, and success. It is time to revolutionize your approach to business. Let's dive in with another episode of Harmonious at Lunch. Welcome back into some more bite-sized business advice. In today's episode, we're talking about brands and branding and the 5 C's of building a brand. I'm excited about this episode. I have a very special guest with me, and he's going to break down for you how to build a brand, but not just the tactics. We're going to dive into the strategy side, which if you've listened to this show for more than 3 seconds, you know I love that stuff because that's the importance. That's how you can decide what's right for you and what's not right for you. So without any further ado, Kim Rosediba, welcome to the show and thank you for being here.
Brandon, this is delightful to be here. And I'm really excited because you've got brand in your name.
I do. I am on brand right there in my name. I'm always on brand. So that's awesome. I love that you picked up on that. But let's dive in here. We want to talk about the 5 C's of branding, how to build a brand. You've written a couple of books on branding, so you're not new to this topic. But where do we need to start? Where does the listener need to start when we're diving into this conversation?
So we really need to start with what is a brand, because I think there's some misconceptions of what a brand is. So I have a very simple definition. I've adapted a very famous quote by Maya Angelou, which is, a brand isn't about what it says or does, but how it makes its customers feel. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, it's about how I feel about your brand. That's the takeaway. So the 5 C's are all there to make sure that takeaway is going to be consistent. So do you want me to walk you through the 5 C's?
I do, but when you said that, I had a question that just popped in my mind. Okay. You can say pass. I don't care. I'm not tied to this question, but I would love to go through maybe 3 quick examples of top companies in the world, and for you to articulate what their brand is in a general consensus kind of way. But the 3 that popped in my head would be Apple, Tesla, and Twitter. And those 2 I definitely chose on purpose. But I'm curious, what would you say those brands are in the way that they make their customers feel?
So Apple, there's a really great story attached to trying to get somebody to become the new CEO. And it was I'm trying to remember, I don't have all the details, but at the end of the day, when Jobs was trying to sell as getting somebody to become the new CEO, he talked about, do you want to change the world? As opposed to, do you want to make another cell phone? Or do you want to make another iPad? No, that's not what they do. So his idea was much bigger, and that's where you start with the why. So when you think about the why, that's from a customer's perspective, the feeling is that this company's got my back on a particular topic. They care, not only about me, but they care bigger than just me. So Tesla, I mean, again, positioning is really important. There's a lot of car companies out there. It's the only electric vehicle car. So they repositioned themselves into the marketplace. They didn't compete. They didn't want to compete. Now look at all the other car companies. They're trying to compete. And nobody thinks of them as electric car company. A lot of them are hybrids now because, you know what? They know how to do the gas vehicle. So as the electric car, they position themselves from an environmental perspective, right? So that's the why. Sorry, Twitter was the 3rd one? Which one was the 3rd one? I forgot now.
Yes, it was Twitter. And
you said Twitter because I use X.
Oh, you see me? Look at me. I'm 2 years ago. I'm not even caught up to the real times, but I did choose that one because it's interesting to see. They're both owned by Elon Musk,
Yeah.
both Twitter and Tesla, and I think they're vastly different brands.
So so I that one's a challenge for me because I'm not sure where it's going either as a customer. So that one I don't know, but I'll give you another example of another one because I think this is a powerful one. And this is Elizabeth Arden, the cosmetic company. And if you go back, and again, the stories in my book behind me, they're the branding queens. And she started off with a face cream, but she started with a face cream. And what she started selling, because she went door to door selling her jar of face cream. Now, her uncle was the inventor. She did not have come up with it. Her uncle was a scientist. And she said she was selling a jar of a dream. And so that's what I mean by thinking bigger and positioning your brand, not just on a product. Now, when you start as an entrepreneur, the focus that you're focusing on is making the best product or service possible, positioning yourself in a marketplace against all your competition. The last thing you're thinking about is changing the world. But you're changing the world through a product. What you have to do is elevate it beyond that and really understand from a customer's wide perspective, because this is your promise. This is your vision. This is your position. This is your values. And so that's the first C. First C is the commitment. So I've actually taken you into the 5 C's because it's really important to understand how a brand's going to make you feel. And that actually starts with your commitment. Because if you're not committed, do I care about you? No. So that's the first C is commitment. So that's your promise. And it doesn't come easy to tell you today, you should sit down because you're selling a widget or you're selling a product. Now figure out what it comes. It comes with time. But sometimes you actually start with a cause. And I mean, that's the other really interesting thing today. You're seeing more brands starting with a cause. And they know their why right from the beginning. And it makes it easier for them. But if you're a scientist, you're an innovator, you may start with a product first, and then you're going to have to figure out where is it going to go from there. And how are you changing people's lives for the better? So the second one is construct. And this is really the aspects that I think most people relate to a brand, which is the logo, the packaging, the color, the feeling, what is it smelling? What does it taste like? All the attributes tied to it. And the personality. The third one, a lot of people say, well, I thought the third one's going to be customer. But it's actually bigger than your customer. It's your community. Customer is hugely important, but so are your employees. Advocates. So your employees can be advocates, but there are others out there, hopefully influencers out there that are advocates. Get them on board. And then there's the media, reporters. They have huge influence out there. And again, we're seeing, when I talk about media, I'm talking about everything from people like yourself that has a podcast. You're an influencer. So all of these make up your community. And then outside of that is actually physically where you reside as a business. If you're building a plant, you've got operations, your community becomes really important as well. All of those pieces are really important. The next one is the content. And content is really, when you start talking about marketing, and a lot of people associate branding with marketing. And Marketing is really important to build a brand. But with my 5 Cs, it's much bigger than just marketing. It's all these touch points. So, you've got your marketing in there. You've got your leaders. A lot of cases, your leaders are your spokesperson. You talked about Tesla. Good example of that. PR is huge. You go to, again, I'll talk about the branding queens. There's 20 women, entrepreneurial women, who built iconic brands. And they all started with nothing. No money. So how did they start building their awareness? Was through PR. And that's what a lot of companies are doing today. Thanks to podcasts like yourself, we're able to reach out to audiences that we would not have an opportunity to talk to before. So all of those things that are really the communication elements of branding, and communication elements can be everything from your sales transaction to a flyer, to an ad, a commercial, radio. I mean, the list goes on. And today, we're inundated with so many different touch points from a comms communications perspective. And then the final one is consistency. And consistency is the one that brings them all together. Without this one, you may deliver the best experience once, but you got to do it every time. You got to do it every place. And so how do you do that? This one actually probably is the most important one for longevity, for sustainability. Because if you can't deliver the same consistent to get that feeling that you want the customer to have, if it's inconsistent and it's going to be like, I don't know, maybe this time I'm going to be happy, maybe I'm not going to be happy, then everything else sort of falls apart.
Yeah, that consistency's got to be the hardest one. I would think. Is that true?
It's the one that is the less interesting one, because it's the one that has the infrastructure. It's the one that making sure that your suppliers buy into your values, buy into your commitment. You've got to have your employees bought into your commitment. There's training that's required. There's expectations that's got to be set, not only to your employees, but also, as I said, for your suppliers. How you present the brand has to be consistent at all times. So you've got to do silent shoppers. You got to make sure that there's consistency. Then on top of that, there are trends. There are things that happen that you have to adjust. Customer expectations keeps increasing. Doesn't stay in one spot. So, you may 2 years ago, your consistency, you were at the top of the game, but if you stay that same consistency, you may not be at the top anymore. So you got to monitor and look at all customer feedback. Data collection is huge. This is really important from a consistency perspective. Listening to customers. All of these aspects of monitoring your brand performance, and then feeding into it, and then going back to all the other C's and adjusting accordingly. Mm-hmm. So it's a big circle.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And I'm curious too, because, I mentioned in the beginning, we're talking about the strategy here. So you have not said anything specific to do with these 5 C's, which thank you, first of all, because that's on brand for you. But what does someone do when they understand what the 5 C's are? They want to take it and adapt it to their business. What's the next step for them to actually using this marketing strategy, this branding strategy, to go out and build their brand?
So I'd start with your community. And the first one within your community, and again, it's like a funnel, right? You're going to start really small. It's going to be the reverse, because you're going to start one customer at a time. Ideally, you'd like to, the world, or you'd like to have, millions of customers, but you're going to start one customer at a time. So when you start there, what is your strategy? What is your strategy? What do you want your customer to feel at the end of the day? Start there. And your strategy will be, I always equate a strategy to like a ruler. It's a measuring stick, because then you have something. And if you have your strategy, and then you go across all of the C's, because if you have your strategy, you know who your customer is, like really know who your customer is. And one of the easiest ways to know who your customer is ask them. It is the easiest way, but most brands, that's the last thing they do. They're so busy selling their product. They don't know their You need to understand how. I mean, when I was in the advertising business, one of the things I really enjoyed doing is with a new client and trying to understand their product is, first thing I would do is I would try and be in a situation where I see the customer interact. I mean, if you look at Lego and things like that, you've got people in people's homes watching to see how they interact with the product. People will tell you what they think you want to hear, but if you're actually watching and experiencing, you can actually learn more of what they're trying to, how they use it, what they like, what they don't like. I mean, you do research. Research is great, but if you interpret it incorrectly, it's useless. So asking your customers and understanding how they're relating to it will also tell you whether you've got to change your product, you've got to do something different. They may actually give you another product idea just by talking to them. But that takes your strategy in the sense of, okay, what is it I'm trying to achieve? And then you can start looking as to what you're trying to achieve and who you're trying to communicate to and why you're trying to communicate to them. Then you can start looking at your community and going, okay, is there others like that? Where could I find them? You look at your content and go, okay, this is my community that I'm trying to reach. What are the best tactics from a communications perspective should I be using? Should I be on LinkedIn? Maybe not. And then what you also look at from your construct perspective is just being that consistent presenting your brand, the color, the logo, make sure your logo is there. That one's the easy one. But your first one is your commitment, ties into your customer as to what is it you're trying to make them feel. So it's very high level, but you need that because that becomes your foundation to be able to measure everything else to go, yeah, that tactic, I think that'll work. And it might not.
Yeah, I always find that conversation interesting because we don't do branding work, we don't do marketing work with our clients, but from an operational perspective, we run into with our clients asking them, okay, what are you using? Whether it's what tool are you using, what software are you using for X, or what's your strategy for Y, whatever it is. They've pieced together a bunch of different tactics and they try to shove it into some kind of a strategy. And we're like, hang on, if you just go strategy first and tell me why you're doing this, then the 4 tools that you need will reveal themselves. And it'll be way easier than trying to shove this thing backwards into the funnel that you talked about. So yeah, although yes, Kim, it was a high level conversation, this is the first conversation. And if any of this sounded like work that you've never done, please have this conversation. Go read the book, Branding Queens, which I wish we got more time to dig into that. It sounds like a phenomenal book, but you also have another book that just recently came out as of the release of this episode, at least.
Yes.
So where can the listeners learn more about you, grab copies of your books, and continue this conversation in their own business?
So my next book is called Loyalnomics, The Power of Branding. It's already on Amazon. You can find it also on its website, which is loyalnomics, all one word.com. Or you can just Google me. You'll find me as well. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm active on LinkedIn, and I have a website, which is razdiba.com. All simple.
I love it. Awesome. Well, this is a fantastic episode. Wherever you're watching or listening, all that stuff, all the links to the books, to the website, to LinkedIn, all down below in the show notes. So you can go check that stuff out. Grab a copy for yourself. Kim, thank you so much for being here. This was a great episode.
And keep on, Brian.
Thank you. So also, for those of you who are listening, watching, wherever you are, make sure you subscribe. We want to have you back on tomorrow's episode. That's right. We put out 5 episodes a week because we want to help you build a more harmonious business and life. We'll see you on tomorrow's episode of Harmonious at Lunch.